Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have informational items. We'll move to receive and file those unless there's specific questions in regards to those. Seeing none, we're going to move this around a little bit. My Minister Sorrell's still out in the hallway. Next, we'll go to committee action for the semi-annual review of executive session minutes. Is there a motion? Member Rosenbaum, Member Coates.
It's the recommendation of the state's attorney's office that all previously held minutes continue to be held because the need for confidentiality still exists, and to destroy the executive session audio recordings that are more than 2 years old, except for those that relate to pending litigation.
Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? We'll move to the standing committee agendas, and then we'll get back to our resolution for the sake of time. First up, Member Salzer, Infrastructure. Mike, Coach.
After I survived the hospital, I didn't check in with anybody, but I didn't attend yesterday's meeting, and I know it was conducted by the Vice Chairman, Danny Kelch, and it was certainly probably a better run than when I have it. But anyway, if Mr. Dillon and Mrs. Williams and Betty, who are members of that committee, want to, they can correct me on anything that I think went on. And we had basically a joint resolution, which you've heard about already. It has to do with the change of order at the Health and Human Services in regards to a parking lot and so forth, and it's going to come out of the contingency fund, and it's going to take about a little over $104,000. And most of you have probably read that. They did adopt that. The other two resolutions for our committee, one was the resolution with PUATS, which is dear to my heart because our MPO over here, PUATS is a part of that, and we get an annual amount of money from PUATS to do a lot of our projects and so forth, and we pay into it. I think we paid into the tune of about a little over $53,000 for this coming year, and our projects are going to be returned to us very favorably with an amount of over $2 million. The third one, of course, our learned counsel up there, she has recommended, of course, the semi-annual report in regards to our executive sessions and so forth, and they agreed to that as well. Thank you.
Any questions for Coach?
Yeah, I'll question you guys. Did we have anything else? Okay.
Next, Ways and Means.
Okay. Yeah, the Ways and Means. We did have monthly delinquent taxes for the month of June 2024 with 2 items, and they passed unanimously. And that's it.
Thank you, Chairwoman Duncan. Any questions? Seeing none. Member Rosenbaum, Land Use.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had 3 zoning cases. 2 of them were solar, right next to each other up off of Route 91, up there by Alta. They both passed unanimously. Then we had a special use for a commercial kennel down in Route 24 down in Mapleton at the old RP facility, RP Lumber. And then we had a special waiver for a subdivision waiver where somebody didn't have road access, and that one passed unanimously. And we had 30-some people or so come to talk to us about their opposition to wind towers. So we had 6 people speak. So we had about 25 minutes of testimony or opinions of it, and we welcomed that and listened to them, and that summed it up.
Thank you, Chair Rosenbaum. Any questions for land use? Seeing none, county operations.
Yeah, we had one resolution, the contract for an award to a JDC Family Communication System and transferred funds from IT. And so that was processed as a joint with finance and audit, and that passed unanimously.
Thank you, Chair Ricker. Any questions for operations? Seeing none, county health.
Yes, we only had no resolutions, and we just had the committee action item, which was joint with Infrastructure Committee for the approval of the change order number 26 for the Health and Human Services Building, and that passed unanimously.
Thank you, Vice Chair Coates. Any questions for health? Seeing none, public safety and justice.
We had two resolutions, and I would say thanks to Becky, who continuously does a good job finding us money, but she received a $4,500 donation from an anonymous donor and intends to use that for enrichment programs and the possibility of a sensory garden. And then she received a $1,700 scholarship award that is going to send her or fund her going to a conference in Orlando in July.
Thank you, Vice Chair Phelan. Any questions? Seeing none, finance.
We had one resolution, and that was with County Op, and it was the contract for the JDC Family Communication System and transfer of funds from IT fund balance, and that passed unanimously.
Thank you, Chairwoman Williams. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go back to the resolution for the Health and Human Service Building Operational Agreement. Is there a motion to put this on the floor? Member Phelan, Member Salzer. Administrator Sorrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologies, I was out in the hallway talking with our lobbyist real briefly after his presentation at Finance Committee. So for this item, the current construction schedule assumes that the health department will start seeing clients and patients on Monday, February 3rd. Occupancy will be before that, obviously. That's when the current schedule has us seeing clients and patients. As we start to prepare the FY25 recommended budget for your consideration, and taking into account that our health department is the recipient of many different grants, and some of those grants have building and facility related audits for every building that the health department occupies. Monica and myself thought it wise to formalize how building operations are going to be budgeted going forward in terms of how we break those numbers down, and also put into place to ensure that that we position the health department to have successful facility audits whenever those occur. So what is attached to the resolution and the agenda briefing is an operations agreement. We drafted it, we shared it, and solicited feedback and input from both the coroner and the regional superintendent of schools, and made adjustments as their feedback warranted, and then prepared the document that you have before you today. So just at a real high level, as I said, it talks about who the parties are, and you'll notice that sustainability and resource conservation is not specifically called out. That's because at this point in time, the space that they would occupy is de minimis in nature, and it would again fall under whatever direction you give me. So it would technically fall under the county board's component of the agreement. But we talk about, for example, the funding methodology for how we're going to divide it up. You'll see on page 15 of your packet a table that's embedded in the agreement that has what percent of the office portion of the building each of the entities is occupying, the shared space or the common space of the building, and then a total. So as an example, when you combine the common space and the occupied space, the Board of Health, which includes the community kitchen space, is 62% of the footprint of the building. The coroner's 21%, and the regional superintendent 17%. As we prepare the FY25 budget, we'll divide up those facilities and operating related costs based on those percentages, which means that when you consider the FY25 budget, we'll see in the coroner's budget, we'll see a transfer to the health department fund for their proportional share, 21% of those costs, and 17% share in the regional superintendent of schools budget request. Additionally, it calls out who's going to be responsible for things such as, let's say, utilities. We know the coroner with the morgue is going to be a high water user, so we actually will have a separate meter for water so that the coroner, both Mr. Harwood and at any successor during the life of the agreement, will pay for their own water because of the high nature of their usage. It would be disproportional based on the square footage they actually occupy. It also talks about any of those contracted services that may be needed. So contracted services might, for example, be snow removal of the parking lots, and then any internal services. So that is going to be everything from changing light bulbs over the course of time to whatever the case may be. All those will actually be delivered by the health department staff within the building. Also calls out for, and this gets back to the audit component that I was speaking of earlier. It creates a process that if any alterations to the building are going to be made, it'll come through our capital improvement budgeting process, and you will have the opportunity to weigh in on that through the annual appropriations process, and that prevents any future office holder from deciding to, say, for example, make changes to their space without going through some established process, whether they have spending authority in their budget or not, because ultimately, the health department is responsible for its operations, which means the health department is subject to those grant-related audits that I referenced, and we don't want to position the health department in any way, shape, or form from not getting a clean audit. The term is essentially the life of the building. And then lastly, if there's any occupancy changes, we've accounted for that. So let's say, for example, Monica has to take on additional programming, and you appropriate staffing to do that, or if she has to cut programming, or same thing with the Regional Office of Education or the coroner or sustainability. There's language in here that will then address how do we move people around within the building that we already have, in the space that we already have. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? So Scott, you said you started at the beginning saying that this is something that the coroner's office and the regional office have signed off on?
Yes, in fact, I actually have a paper copy that Beth has already signed in my upstairs.
Well, and just because I know this has been a long process, and I was just wondering, so wasn't the coroner's office designed for, when we talk about common space, to be more that they're going to have separate entrances in and out that or I know the bathrooms probably would be common space, but getting to 21% for when it's going to be isolated, I'm just trying to understand that.
So the coroner's office is, yes, more isolated, but they will share restroom space. They will share back of house employee spaces that all building occupants will have access to. And so we need when you look at it from that perspective, that's the methodology and the thought process that we went through in divvying up the 12,000 and some odd square feet that is not physically assigned to any one department.
And then, I know we won't know until we're operational in the building the true cost of utilities, but in the budgets they have now, since they're separate ROEs in this building, but is that 21% of what we're estimating it to be roughly what it costs for Gift Avenue? Less, higher, or where would that fall?
What we're using as a baseline for as we prepare the FY25 spending plan is utility and operational costs of the old health department building and campus, and then looking at the coroner's water usage, which also then ties into the sewer utility bill as well. So we'll take multiple data points like that and then use that to give our best estimate of what those costs are going to be in year one of operation. And then, we'll get obviously better at that with the FY26 spending plan and beyond, because we'll at that point have, some actual data in terms of how much it costs to operate the building.
And then lastly, not to overcomplicate this, but just from my own understanding, well, a couple things here. So, currently we have Board of Health operations in our facilities now, but we've had no sort of budgetarily payback for any of.
Correct. This is a new methodology, and it's a function of the fact that we've got you're co-locating multiple offices, and in this instance, 2 of the 4 offices that will be in the new building are general fund departments. And so that's why we've got, and they occupy if you add them together, they're 38%, so a little over a third of the total building square footage in the new building. And so, as laid out, the agreement says that the general fund is going to fund 38% of those building costs because we've got 2 general fund offices in the building.
Well, and then this is the but by having an agreement where we've laid out percentages, I don't think it's a bad idea, but if that's the new methodology, do we have to do something very similar to the courthouse and our other facilities of other electeds and what they occupy from a budget perspective? I know you're doing this from a budget perspective, but I'm guessing it's all a clean budget way of itemizing, but it's all going to come out of the same funds that we're paying for stuff now.
Right. And, so a good example is currently during the construction period, environmental health and other portions of the health department have occupied space at the highway department. The health department is actually paying rent, for lack of a better term, to the highway department budget. In the old health department building, sustainability included in their budget some fees or some payments to the health department fund to offset some of their costs for building operations. So it's not a new concept for us. We don't do it here in the courthouse because there are so many functions here in the courthouse that are general fund offices and departments, and so it's largely, and we maintain this building out of the facilities department, which is a general fund department.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Public comment? Seeing none. For miscellaneous, I want to bring up something from our ARPA discussion last month, and I know that from some comments that have been made afterwards, just for some further clear-cut process. So if you recall, we talked about there was about $3.5 million for the fleet garage, and that we had talked about, we'd already started some design, but we also had talked about, that was for the fleet maintenance in general, which we have gas tanks coming for that and the salt garage or salt dome. That was never going to be enough money intended to actually build that facility, which is probably estimated at over $10 million just for the fleet garage. So I know I've talked to Coach Salzer about it, and I think he said he had talked to you, Paul, a little bit about it. What might be best for that leaves about $2 million to build a building, which we don't have the money for, that at best to, at this time, repurpose that money for something else, or at least till staff can come back with a way to pay for that, or recommendations. Is it better to take that $2 million, redo portions of that building to buy us time and make that facility more usable? I just don't feel like we have a plan yet to pay for the long-term new facilities fleet garage to repurpose that money. So I'd have asked staff, and I know that's some time, so Scott to come back with a couple different proposals of, you know, here's a long-term plan of how we would pay for that building over time, or is it worth investing some money in that building to get us another 10, 15, 20 years out of it, to buy us some time where maybe some bonding opportunities would present themselves. I just think we need to have a better plan on that than what we currently have to allocate, and it's not, we need to be more forthcoming that that building might not be possible even though we've had it in there. If that's okay, I just wanted to make that known because we did talk about it and for some direction. Any comments to that? Paul?
I had made the comment to Scott and Coach here about on the fleet garage, maybe, you know, they were saying there's holes in the tin and some of the masonry block were broke or so forth, that maybe we could reskin it or put a new tin on the outside of it. Not saying that that would be there's other opportunities possibly coming down the pike close by that would help us out for a new fleet garage. But if we could keep, if you could keep the fleet garage where it's at right now and still put your new tanks in, fix that up to keep it going, and then I know the buildings behind it are in a lot worse shape, that eventually if something else came up, you could have that one maybe be your storage shed, and when we could afford the new fleet garage. But I mean, the structure of it, it's not that old of a building, that sometimes maybe taking some of that money to make sure it's totally enclosed, you know, if there's, let's do our repairs that need to be done possibly on that while we've got the money, so at least is still functioning fairly well for them until we do have the money to build the new one.
Thank you, Member Rosenbaum. I agree. Okay, just wanted some clear direction for that and possible discussion. And then staff will come back at some point with some long-term options or short-term viability options. Anything else under miscellaneous? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.